All right, this is Truth, Culture, Life, and I am joined today by a very special guest, somebody that I have known for many years as Father Frank Pavone. And Father, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join Truth, Culture, Life this morning. You're a busy man. My understanding is that you are doing tons of media right now. Is that correct?
Morning to night. It's 6:30 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night this week. It's you know how they say, there's no such thing as bad press.
Yeah. And
you know, it's
And here's what's extraordinary about you. I think I knew of you before I went to law school in 2009.
yeah.
I don't know how I got in touch with you. I somehow found your number and I think I just called you and you
I
answered your
think so.
phone.
I think so. Yeah.
And I invited you to the law school at Ave Maria School of Law, probably back in 2009 or 10. My memory's hazy on it. And you came.
I came.
And what's amazing is, I'm sure you're doing huge national programs, but you also take the time to do smaller programs as well. And what I'm getting at is the fact that you've always been so accessible and you've always been such an open book with your critics as well as with your fans. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly correct. And what I've found is that those who are critics are the ones that don't want to connect. They don't want to have the face-to-face. We reach out to them and they're like, no, they're off in their other world. Why? Because they think they know.
Right.
They know it all. They know, and there's no convincing them. And yet it's those that decide to connect. They become the friends, the colleagues like you, side by side in a movement, and we get the job done.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's get into that then. Let's get into the critics. Before we do that, are you a coffee drinker? Do you drink coffee in the morning?
I actually don't. Sometimes I drink tea.
Okay. So I'm trying to paint a picture here on what your morning routine was when you woke up and you look at the headlines and you see your name all over the headlines. And apparently you've been laicized.
Well, this idea of finding one's name in the headlines has happened to me, quite a few times over the years. But you know that these things are coming. You see them on the horizon, and in this case, with this laicizing from the Vatican, this has been a pattern now for 21 years. What do I mean? As you know, I've been leading Priests for Life for about 30 years. But for the last 21 of those years, certain bishops in the church have tried to block our work. Now, you might say, well, why is that? The church is pro-life. You're doing good pro-life work. And for those that don't know, we are the largest pro-life ministry in the Catholic Church. We work with the Holy See, even to this very day, at the United Nations. The Holy See mission to the UN relies on the help of Priests for Life. The Secretariat of State relies on the help of Priests for Life. We just got finished helping organize a Vatican conference of Catholic NGOs. We work with all the dioceses, providing free literature for the priests, preaching on every Sunday reading of the entire lectionary, things like that. We run the largest ministry in the world for healing after abortion, Rachel's Vineyard, which Pope Francis loves, and he personally encouraged me in that. I've talked to him several times over the years, and much more. Not to mention, of course, Royce electing pro-life candidates. We teach the church's teaching on political responsibility, and on it goes. So one might say, well, why in the world would church authorities, including the very ones that you're helping side by side, be against this work? And it boils down to a very simple principle. Priests for Life is and has been from the beginning a reform movement in the Catholic Church. Not to reform the teaching, but to get us to do something about it. Because everybody says, not everybody, but a lot of people, when they hear about Priests for Life, they say, why isn't every priest for life? And I say, well, we just help them to say so. It's not a question of what is the teaching. The teaching is solid, stable, and clear. It's the question of, well, what are we doing with it? Are we articulating it boldly? Are we putting it as the priority it deserves to be? Because there's no right more fundamental. There's no one more defenseless than the unborn, and there's nothing that's taking more human life than abortion. Are we giving it the kind of emphasis that Evangelium Vitae calls for, John Paul II's encyclical? And what I have found consistently is that when we push on this, we get push back, because there are many in the church, they just want the status quo. The many clergy, they don't want to address this because they're afraid of controversy. We stir up controversy. And yet, like I say, it's not because we're mean. We conduct the largest ministry for healing after abortion. I helped Abby Johnson on her journey. I just ask her, anyone out there who thinks, oh, these guys are, hard-hearted or callous or mean, ask Abby Johnson what kind of influence I had on her. And Roy, you know how it is. So this is why it's the pushback that we get. It's political pushback is the long and the short of it.
Sure. So what, I mean, when did you know? When did you know that the powers to be, and, be it bishops, the Vatican, that there was people going after your ability to do ministry?
It started in 2001. Cardinal O'Connor died in 2000. He's the one that he protected me. He's the one that ordained me and let me do Priest for Life. He died in 2000. His successor, Cardinal Egan, in 2001 said, all right, you've been leading Priest for Life for 7-8 years, got to go back to a parish. Well, there was an uproar. People flooded his office with phone calls and letters and faxes. Why are you taking the most visible pro-life priest out of full-time pro-life ministry? Was their question. There was no answer. And furthermore, I said to the cardinal, may I please talk to you as my bishop about my vocation? The bishop is supposed to nourish the vocation of his priests, right? Supposed to be a spiritual father. I said, Cardinal, I'd like to talk to you about my vocation, because I am convinced, and now at that time I said I have lived for now 8 years with the conviction that I'm called to be a full-time pro-life leader. Priests have different charisms, different ministries. Some devote themselves full-time to the poor, some to the imprisoned, some to educating youth. Well, how about to the unborn? Do the unborn deserve this kind of a full-time focus in the church? I think yes. He wouldn't even have the conversation with me. And that was the beginning of the red flags. I said, no, this is not normal. He wouldn't even have the conversation. And that hurts to this day. And when I asked another bishop one time, I said, how come the cardinal is not letting me do this work and he's not giving me any reason why? You know what I was told, Royce? And people can judge for themselves whether this is right or wrong. He said to me, well, he doesn't have to give you a reason. Now, you want to talk legalistically? Maybe you can make a case for that. You want to talk on a human level? Communio in the church? Mutual encouragement? I don't think that's justified at all. So, but one thing led to another. That was just the first salvo. And then, Cardinal Egan finally, we did reach an agreement. I accepted an assignment, but it was in a parish that didn't need me. So I was able to continue doing Priest for Life. Then, but then he started continuing to say, oh, no, you can't do this. You can't do the pro-life work. Again, with no reason, no explanation, no justification. So I applied. I was invited at that point and asked permission to join Bishop John Yanta in Amarillo. He wanted to set up an entire, society whereby we could accept seminarians and train priests. He was like, let's expand this pro-life work. So I was transferred to Amarillo in 2005. Bishop Yanta, we worked together for several years. But then he retired. Bishop Zurich came in, and he did not support my work at all. And then he started to try to limit it, again, for totally unjustified reasons. The whole story, I don't want to go on and on and on. The whole story is at fatherfrankpavone.com. But the long and the short is Bishop Zurich tried to restrict my work. I appealed to the Vatican. They backed me up. They said, do your work. Then Bishop said, oh, no, the Vatican told me you couldn't do your work. I went to the Vatican. They said, yes, you can do your work. And this was ridiculous back and forth. Again, for 20 years now, I've been dealing with this. So did I see it coming? Oh, yeah. And did Bishop Zurich say he wanted me out of the priesthood? Yes, he did. You know when he said that to me 5 years ago? In fact, he said to me, I want you to request laicization. I said, why in the world would I do that? I want you to request laicization. No, I said, I'm not going to do that. Well, then I'm going to request to the Pope that he kick you out of the priesthood. That's the way a bishop should treat his priest, right? So this was 5 years ago. And that happened after I challenged him in a meeting that we had that was witnessed by several others. I said, Bishop, you don't want me to do my pro-life work? No, you didn't want me to do my pro-life work outside the diocese. I said, well, do you want me to do work inside the diocese? He said, no. I said, well, let me get this straight. You don't want me to work outside the diocese. You want me to work in the diocese. You want me out of the priesthood altogether, don't you? And in the meeting, you know what he said to me? No, never, never. And that was a few weeks before he sent me the letter saying, I want you out of the priesthood. Mm. And then people say to me, Royce, they say to me, oh, well, you weren't obedient to your bishop. How in the world are you supposed to even make sense of what the bishop is saying when you got this kind of nonsense going back and forth?
So let's talk about that. I mean, that's the tough one, right? I mean, a lot of the critics, I mean, there's the social media, by the way, I think you're probably trending on like Facebook and Twitter and everywhere else. And there's tons of Google searches. People are looking up phrases like nuncio. I mean, they're right to the right people. And, but I mean, so what about obedience? I mean, the obedience is a virtue. And look, I mean, I'm married. I guess as spouses, we're supposed to be obedient to each other, right?
Right.
Right. I mean, so what about that?
That's harder, by the way. That's harder.
And I guess it is, right? I mean, but what about that? I mean, is there any truth to that? Could you just at this point or months ago just submitted to the authority of would have been Bishop Zurich?
Well, to do what? And see, that's where my critics don't answer that question. Obedience, we all believe in obedience. And I've been obedient. I'll give you some examples. In fact, let me just summarize the answer this way. FatherFrankPavone.com has the whole history, which we have no way to even cover a fraction of it in our limited conversation here. But I want to plead with people. If you want to get the in-depth answer to this question and answer my critics, and I say to the critics themselves, take the time, have enough respect, okay, to take the time to read the history. I've got the letters there, documentation, etc. FatherFrankPavone.com. And Royce, what it shows there is that I have been obedient, and there's a letter there even from the vicar for clergy of Amarillo. So this is the priest under Bishop Zurich, who at that time was in charge of the priests. He writes this open letter because he had heard these accusations of Father Frank not being obedient. He writes in his letter that I complied with every request they made of me and did so in a respectful, humble way. I did what they asked me to do. There was a time, like I told you, if Cardinal Egan gave me an assignment, I accepted the assignment. The fact that it was at a non-busy parish is beside the point. We worked that out between us, but I accepted the assignment. Bishop Zurich called me back to Amarillo at a certain point in midst my work of Priest for Life. I didn't go to Anchorage. I didn't go to Australia. I went to Amarillo. And now, well, you haven't been obedient. Obedient exactly to what? So if he tells me you can't do your pro-life work, it's not just a question of, Jesus said something about obedience. He said, those among the Gentiles lord it over their subjects. They make their authority felt. It must not be that way with you. The greatest among you must be the servant. The church has some teachings about this. The bishop is not just an authority figure to whom you owe obedience. He's a brother who owes you respect. And this is just taken out of the equation. I acknowledge authority. I oppose the abuse of authority. Anybody, Royce, so you're an attorney, you know how this works. Anybody who looks at the record will see as clear as the sun shining in the sky that some of these men have abused their authority against me. I do not stand for that. Nobody should stand for that. And that's why we have within the church the mechanisms to heal that. We have, just like we have in the civil arena, we have mechanisms of appeal. I've had to appeal to the Vatican multiple times against the abuse of authority of this bishop.
Can we talk about that briefly? The appeal. Yeah. So back in 2019, and again, people can look. They can go to FatherFrankPavone.com for the history. Like you said, we posted that, a little ticker on the screen. But back in 2019, the Vatican declared invalid various punishments and restrictions that were placed upon you by Bishop Zurich. That's and right. Authorized you to transfer to a new diocese. That's Whatever right. happened with that? Were you able to transfer to the Diocese of Colorado Springs, or did that not come to fruition?
Well, it took effect, but then the Vatican's Congregation for the Clergy said, well, we want you and the bishop to enter into some kind of signed agreement. And we said, fine, we know what we want to do. The bishop welcomed me because he believed in, as like millions of people believe in, the work we do. And he wanted to support me in doing that, a support that I had not been receiving from Bishop Zurich. So Bishop Sheridan, who's now passed away, sadly, but he and I had an agreement, right? Then I get a letter that says, well, the agreement also has to be signed by Bishop Zurich. And I said, again, I try to be as respectful as possible. I basically said to the congregation, are you out of your mind? This is the man who is abusing me. Are you out of your mind? You want him to agree to what he's been not agreeing to for a decade. You want him to agree to it now. Otherwise, I can't do it. And what the nub of the agreement was, well, you can transfer to Colorado Springs, but you can only do your pro-life work half the time. So I don't want to hear people say to me, oh, it's not about the pro-life work, it's about obedience. Well, hold on a second. I'm submitting myself to the obedience of my bishop. The Vatican says Michael Sheridan, Colorado Springs, is your new bishop. Colorado Springs, Michael Sheridan says, I believe in this pro-life work. Go do it like you've been doing for 25 years. Patrick Zurich comes in and says, no, you can't do it. The Vatican says, oh, you can only do it half the time.
How is it that Zurich would still have authority if you were then transferred? Is it
because a transfer is not exactly the same as an excardination? In other words, it's sort of like they're still somewhat connected, but you're not. This is where the canon lawyers have to step in. Some of this is beyond my pay grade. But the thing is that the very reason Bishop Sheridan was welcoming me was being contradicted. And they said, well, you can only do this pro-life work half the time. So both Bishop Sheridan and I agreed that would not serve the pro-life movement the way I was. This is not a theoretical thing. I was already serving in this capacity for 25 years. So it's like, this is not in theory, this is in practice. I'm responding to the needs. I'm helping lead the movement, as you already described, where we're in the leadership together. So no, so that's what happened with that. And I've been, yanked around in a dozen different directions by the hierarchy at different times, shifting goalposts, changing expectations, total lack of transparency in the processes that we've had to go through. But my position has always been precisely exactly the same as it was on day one, which again, I'll articulate very simply. I say to the church, may I please have your blessing to live my vocation as a full-time pro-life activist priest. That's it. That one sentence. That's my request of the church. That was my request of Cardinal O'Connor. He said yes. Bishop Yonta said yes. Bishop Sheridan said yes. Bishop Zurich said no. The Vatican has said yes and no. And now that's my request of Pope Francis, because as an attorney, at a certain point you reach the highest level. So in civil law, you get a decision from the Supreme Court, and that's the final court of appeal, right? There's no court higher than the Supreme Court of the United States. So similarly, this change now, that we say, oh, you can't be a priest. This was signed off on by Pope Francis. So that's why you see in some of these news stories, oh, well, there is no possibility of appeal. That's like saying the Supreme Court has spoken, there is no possibility of appeal. Well, of course not, except for what? Except for the Supreme Court changing its mind like it just did when it threw Roe v. Wade onto the ash heap of history. Guess what? A pope can change what a pope did before. So my appeal now is to Pope Francis personally, please reconsider this. And you know what, Royce, if he doesn't, there's a next pope coming after him. And that pope will hear from me on day one. I want to be a priest. I've never doubted my vocation as a priest. I want to be a priest.
Let's get into that. So are you technically still a priest?
Well, of course, ontologically, I am. Catholic doctrine says that you never can lose the priesthood. You can never lose the character or power of the priesthood. The church regulates how you can exercise that. Now, Royce, I haven't gotten anything. I can't show you like a letter or a piece of paper that tells me I've been dismissed from the priesthood. I don't have any instructions. I wasn't told, you can't dress like a priest, you can't be called father, can't say mass. I haven't been told any of that. I heard this from the Catholic News Agency, whom I asked, how in the world did you hear about this before I did? So
has anybody seen the letter? I mean, apparently a letter went out to was it the USCCB or something like that? I mean, there's been some letter from the nuncio. Is that correct?
Nuncio. Yeah. But except the nuncio didn't call me. I mean, I got, my cell phone seems to be working here.
So yeah, I mean, I can call you, and
you can call me.
Yeah, I would imagine that. Yeah. So you've seen nothing. You've seen nothing official laicizing you.
Nothing. Catholic News Agency, good for them. They got their contact. They told me they have their sources. Yeah, well, yeah, I have my sources too.
Father, I don't know. Don't take it personally. I remember being in Rome for 10 days and getting an invitation for something at the Holy See. And a woman that lived in Rome said, it's not uncommon. The event was 3 days ago and we got the invitation, I think, on Monday. She's like, that happens. They throw a party and they send you the invitation 3 days later.
I worked at the Vatican for 2 years as an official. Every day I was pulling my hair out. This place is as dysfunctional as it gets.
Well, it's yeah. So, okay, look, I know we only have a couple minutes left. You've already discussed this a little bit. So there's nothing you can do. There's no appeal process with respect to this apparent decision, which again, I'm going to say it's alleged because you haven't seen the official communication.
Right.
You're going to wait it out. In the meantime, what is your proper title? Is it still technically father?
I don't know. People can call me brother in Christ, pro-life leader, Frank Pavone. I mean,
I guess until you get the the letter, you're still technically Father Frank Pavone, as far as you know.
That's how people know me. Everybody's saying to me, we'll talk about the outpouring of support on social media. Say, you will always be Father Frank to me. So, but the point though is this: I want people to be assured of something. You and I are colleagues in this movement, and I want all our fellow colleagues that hear this conversation to be assured. My board, my staff, my team at Priests for Life are 1,000% with me and with each other. We are united in going forward. Nothing's going to change with Priests for Life. I'm always respectful of authority. I'll do the right thing. But that doesn't mean stepping away from Priests for Life. I'll be leading this ministry. Most of it is done by lay people. Most of the work doesn't require priestly functions. We have other priests involved in the leadership of the group. We are moving forward full force. Nobody should think anything is slowing down or turning around or stopping. We are together. We're going to end abortion. That's what this is about. We're going to end abortion. And endabortion.us is our main website, by the way. The best way people can react to this situation, let's show in a positive way. Let's show the church, let's show the hierarchy that we're united as a movement and that you continue to support the good work of Priests for Life. People don't support Priests for Life because a bishop tells them to. People support Priests for Life because they know the work is good and it's getting it done. And that's what we're going to keep doing together.
All right. Yeah. Listen, Father Frank, we really appreciate you taking the time to come up here. We've thrown that link up, endabortion.us. Just really quick. I mean, what's the next step for you? What are you working on right now? I know you always have a lot of things going on.
We're gearing up, of course, as we all are, for the March for Life, just a month away, and I'll be leading once again the National Prayer Service at Constitution Hall. That's a interdenominational service. That'll be a chance for people to come together with me and our team in person. Then we'll have the march itself. Then on that'll be Friday, January 20th. Then on January 22nd, Sunday, we'll be doing a memorial service in front of the Supreme Court. That's the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, which of course is now defunct, and we will be there. So I want people to be there too. If they're going to be in Washington, priestforlife.org/marchforlife is the place where you have the schedule, but you find it all at endabortion.us. So we'll be with you there in DC as well.
Yeah, we'll see you there. Hope to see you at the summit, and I'm sure marching around and hopefully having some hot chocolate behind the rally point.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, listen, Father, if you do receive that letter, will you make that letter public?
Oh, absolutely. You put up earlier, fatherfrankpavone.com. It has all the letters and all the. We are an open book. We are going to put everything out there, and we will let you know right away.
We'll make sure that everybody watching this has that link and they can receive that material. And thank you so much, Father, again, for taking the time to be with us today on Truth, Culture, Life.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Father. Merry Christmas to you.